in the armed forces, training is coercive to enforce discipline when a cadet joins NDA, and physical leadership is at play at the initial level. As you move up the hierarchy, how other kinds of leadership are developed?
Well, I think that brings us to a very fundamental question about leadership and management. So, in the earlier stages, you're a leader, and that's why they say you lead from the front. And that is not to say that both aspects are not at play at any one time, but as you grow up and rise in the army hierarchy, the managerial aspects will become more important, and the leadership aspects are still there. As I said, when I'm going and visiting the troops on the front lines, that is the leadership aspect. But the whole process which sent them to that front line was the managerial part. Which unit to go, when to go, how to go, was all being managed by a complete team. So this is a transition process which takes place, and how well you can absorb these new challenges as you go up with in the ranks is very important. And those who are able to adapt to these changes will obviously do better, because the qualities which are required as a young officer to be able to, like we say, as a young officer, you should be able to outshoot and outrun your men. That you should be the first person who, in the physical training, and if they're running it in 10 minutes, you should be able to run it in 9 minutes. No, you should be better physically fit, and so on and so forth. That doesn't mean that as the chief has to be able to run faster than the youngest man in the army.
Right.
So obviously there is a transition between the qualities which are required, and I think that is a very important part which is sometimes lost sight of. Because as a young officer, that is your sort of comfort zone, because you're physically fit. There are less demands of the managerial aspects, which, as I said, are sometimes more difficult than the leadership aspects, because those decisions don't really affect so many people. So, this, if you can transit and be able to do both roles in the correct proportion, then it is much better.
How do you groom yourself to be effective as a leader, from direct tactical leadership to indirect strategic leadership, and what are your experiences in these areas?
Yeah, so we have two terms in the army, one is called battle drills and one is called battle procedures. So, battle drills are your instinctive reactions to a situation where you can't start thinking that these are the pros and these are the cons, this is the advantage, this is the advantage. If fire comes on you, you have to dive for the nearest rock and hide behind it. That time you can't start deciding, what is to be done. But again, as this tactical situation becomes more complex, then there will always be a little bit more reaction time. And that is where the battle procedures start kicking in. Again, it is a question of tactics at a very basic level. Then you have operational level. It's not straight away jumping to strategy. So there is a tactics, and then operational art, and then you go on to the realm of strategy. And I would say tactics is the battalion commander and below. The operational level is the brigade commander, div commander, divisional commander. And then you go on to the strategic level as a army commander and the chief. And so, of course, these levels are also slightly overlapping. It's not very clear-cut demarcation. So again, how you are able to deal with each situation, keeping in mind whether it's peacetime, wartime, whether it is counterinsurgency, whether it is a border area, whether it is in your depth area, all those factors will come into play. And so it's sometimes it's intuitive. You just do the correct thing without knowing why you did it. But sometimes it is a result of going through an informal procedure in your mind before you arrive at that decision.
Right. Uh, so on the backdrop of what we have been speaking about leadership, so what has been your best or most memorable leadership experience in your 42 years in the army, and also the most difficult leadership experience, or like sometimes there are moments of truth that a leader has to face.
When you join the army, you don't think you're going to become chief.
Yes,
That's
true.
very far away.
Yeah.
But whenever you join, and whichever branch you join, I think the first ambition of any officer is to be able to become a battalion commander or regimental commander, that is in the rank of colonel. That is the basic unit, if I were to put it, because it is the battalions which constitute the brigades, and the brigades constitute the divisions. So that is the basic brick, you can say. So your ambition is to be able to command a battalion, and the best tenure I had was as a battalion commander when I commanded the 2 Rashtra Rifles battalion in a counterinsurgency environment in JNK.
Okay.
So I would say that was the best as well as the most challenging, because those were the post-Kargil days when terrorism was at its peak in the JNK Valley, and I think because of the efforts of all the units which were deployed there, not just my unit, but because of the efforts of all the units which were deployed there, we were able to bring down the levels of violence and restore normalcy within a span of 2-3 years after the Kargil conflict had got over, which was 99 2000. So by 2000, between 2000 and 2003 was the time I commanded my battalion. So that was, I think, the best and at the same time the most challenging.
Okay.
Well, decision making again. People are under the impression that army is all yes sir, no sir. But when operational planning is done, actually inputs are taken from everyone. It is not just the commanding officer, or it's not just the general who says that do this. He has not reached that decision in isolation. And at the planning level, before a decision is taken, then everyone gives his inputs. And it is only after everyone's inputs have been carefully considered, then that best course of action which is there. Again, there would be option A, option B, option C, and then whoever is the boss man, whether a battalion commander or a brigade commander, has to choose, and that's what he's getting paid for, to take that decision. If it is good, he gets all the credit. If it is bad, then you face the flak. So, as a battalion commander, as I said, in counterinsurgency, we were launching operations almost every alternate day. They could have gone either way. It could have been a lot of casualties suffered or terrorists eliminated. I think I was lucky that most of my operations were successful, and perhaps that's why I reached where I reached.
Yes.